Greenlightnetwork presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. We're here for NFL Week 17, and I think this is a week for Achilles because there are a lot of yard spreads out there with a lot of big money line favorites here. So I think it's a big week for Achilles on the betting scheme. Whenever he can risk $10 and win $1, that's his kind of betting here. So big spreads in week 17 of the NFL season. Are you ready to find some NFL games to find some picks in, Achilles?
Yeah, I mean, if we can find any looking at these spreads, then yeah, I'd be happy to.
We should probably know going into our best bets. I have two, and I'm not all that comfortable with those two. So it's not a big week for the champ this week. I think this is one of those layout weeks and not lose money and not force big spread bets.
Yeah, listen, with the holidays, just going by us, and obviously the new year that just happened. It's been kind of a busy time, so I haven't had a chance to really look at things. So I'm kind of hoping that together we can talk ourselves into 5 good picks.
I don't know if we could talk ourselves into 5 good picks. We might be able to talk us into 5 picks here. So let's start out with the big spread to start out the week. Atlanta Falcons go to the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills coming off a pretty nice win. Probably their best game of the season versus New England. Atlanta comes off, I don't know what you call that Detroit Lions win, other than a Detroit Lions win for Atlanta. It certainly wasn't pretty, but I guess they got the win. But overall, the Buffalo Bills are 14.5-point favorites here at home. Over-under sits at 46, 7.5 points on the first half spread. 23 is the over-under total on this one. I think we both pretty much are pretty on it on who's going to win this game. It would be a very shocking upset here. 14.5. Do you have a play on either side here? Can I talk you into a play on either side here? Buffalo still tends to win pretty big when they win, but 14.5 is a very large spread here.
Yeah, it's a little too large for my liking, even with the fact that every time they play a pretty bad team, they seem to do a pretty good job at actually covering these large spreads. Even with all that said, I think this spread's just a little too large for me. So I'm probably a no-go on this, but you can always talk me into certain either halves, points, whatever you want to play here.
Yeah, I have thought about doing an alternate line a little bit here of taking the Bills and just, if they get the blowout, at least you get the blowout with a little bit of action. But I don't think I'd even do that. The only thing I can say about this game wise is Atlanta's a very weird team when you look at the just the overall DVOA numbers. They are the 32 ranked team in total DVOA, yet they sit at 7-5. There's still an outside chance that they end up making the playoffs here, and no matter what they do during the season, they are going to have the biggest DVOA number to wins to what their actual total is. So basically, Atlanta has lost badly to every good team and beaten pretty much every bad team, but beaten them by such a little margin that nobody respects them. And I think that's probably where we both stand when watching the Atlanta Falcons as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really, there's certain weeks. We obviously think this is a pretty bad team, but we've seen several cases where they end up showing up and actually, upsetting certain teams. And I really don't know, man. I think you'd have to really try and sell me either way. I don't know how I feel about this particular matchup with such a large spread.
Yeah, definitely so. I guess if I was going to take anything, I'd probably lean towards Buffalo here. But I think this one right now is probably a pass. On the over-under side of things, 46. I don't think Atlanta probably scores much over 14 points, but I'd probably lean a little to the over just because I think the Bills probably could get into that 35-point range if they really wanted to push it. But I think that number sits a little too much right on the money for me.
Okay, well, I guess with all the games being played on Sunday, no Thursday night game obviously this week, so I think we're going to have a shot at least catching up to 5 picks here. But with the way some of these spreads look, I don't know. You're going to have to sell me pretty hard.
All right. Well, I can pretty much guarantee you I'm not going to try to sell you on either participant in this one. The New York Giants go to the Chicago Bears. Somehow the Bears are a 6.5-point favorite after being a touchdown underdog last week to a 4-win Seattle team. Why that line is what it is, I don't know. In the QB roulette wheel, Andy Dalton's number came up this week. So it's always fun trying to guess which quarterback will be playing for the Chicago Bears in what week. And at this point, I think I just want Matt Nagy to stay around to see if we can continue just randomly selecting a quarterback from week to week. But anyway, there's zero chance I'm taking the Bears at -6.5 on this, and I probably will not play the Giants ever again, at least probably not for the next 3 to 5 years. But
you love the Giants.
Yes, I think you love the Giants. Where is your head at in this game, or is it's at I don't want to watch this game?
You know, I think, like I said, I really haven't had a lot of time to really look at things deeply, but I think a lot of this particular bet depends on whether the Chicago defensive guys are going to be playing. Are they active? Are they all active? Because if they are, I think that's going to be the biggest difference in this game. We've obviously know that they have guys that can, get after the quarterback, and that pass rush can really disrupt things for the opposing team. So as many struggles as the Giants have dealt with on offense, and even then on defense for the most part, I think that if Chicago comes up defensively, either Andy Dalton or, I'm not a big, Fields guy, but either Dalton or who'd they play last week?
Foles
Nick
last
Foles.
Week.
So either one of those two guys I feel like could do just enough to get this win. But at 6.5 to pick, as a favorite, I don't like it. I don't like picking Chicago as a 7-point favorite, basically. Because they have to score 7 points. But so you'd have to give me something else to take in this game, because that's not something I'm taking.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at the over-under in this one, and it sits at 36.5. I don't know how you work out that the Chicago Bears are going to win by 6.5, and somehow this total is going to be in and around 36.5. But I'm just I think I'm more a no-go on this game than I was the one before. At least with the one before, I can tell you for sure that the Buffalo Bills will probably at least win the game. You could tell me pretty much anything is going to happen in this game, and I'd probably nod my head and say, sure.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, folks. Let's move on to the main event game of the week. I don't know if we can have a bet on this one, but it's certainly at least much more worth talking about than the previous two here. Kansas City Chiefs at the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals only a 3.5-point dog here, coming off a big win versus the Baltimore Ravens. 51.5 on the total. So they think this is going to be a shootout here. I don't know if I quite agree with that. But if anyone's going to be able to light up this Chiefs defense, which has been really good the last half of the season, it probably will be the Cincinnati Bengals. 3-point is the first half line. 24.5 is the first half total. So I'm really having a hard time betting on this one, because I do really like this Bengals team. I think this Bengals team is at least not quite in that, upper category, but I think they're just off the pace. But it's hard for me to trust them in a game like this. I'm curious where your head at is in this game, especially with Kansas City going on the road here in probably pretty nasty weather in Cincinnati.
Yeah, listen, I understand why people assume that this is going to be a shootout. You look at, the way the Bengals performed last week versus a nailing Ravens team. They had an explosive, explosion. Whereas everyone thinks of the Chiefs and they think obviously offense, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and all those guys. But we're failing to see the fact that Cincinnati hasn't been horrible on defense this season. They've had a few lapses here and there, but overall they've been pretty good on defense. And Kansas City, as you mentioned, over the last half of the season, has really stepped up their defensive game, which is one of the reasons why they've been in so many games this latter half of the season. With all that being said, I also think the Chiefs are probably my pick here, even though I do think that the Bengals have the better chance of actually covering the spread simply because we've seen a more consistent defense from them throughout the season, and we see the ability, the potential of an offensive explosion from their offense and all those different weapons that they have. So I do like the Chiefs because my heart tells me to go with the Chiefs. But to be completely honest with you, my brain is thinking that the Bengals are going to be the ones to cover this one.
Yeah, I'm a little torn here. That hook definitely bothers me a little bit, but I just, a part of me just doesn't think the Bengals are quite ready for the type of smoke that Kansas City's going to give them. We were impressed, with the win versus the Bengals last week over the Ravens, but that's a really decimated Ravens team. This is a total different step up for these Bengals, and I mean, you even go back a couple weeks when they played the Niners. Their offense struggled a little bit. They made a couple bad plays, and this is, at least a step or two up even from that. So I want to take the Chiefs. I don't like the number all that much. The only thing I do wonder if maybe after the Chiefs, they aren't secure necessarily in their place as the 1 seed, but maybe this is one of those games they start to relax in. They've had a nice run. They put themselves, back probably as the favorite in the AFC, and maybe they slip up. And I think this game sort of means more to the Bengals. So that's where I'd lean spread-wise, probably taking the Bengals in this one. And I'm just curious, if this Chiefs defense, which is, it's been really good, but it's also sort of, picked the chops of some pretty poor teams. This will be the first, real offensive team. And I think we'll get a real good feel of how this Kansas City defense stacks up for some real offensive weapons here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is a very important game for both sides. It's definitely a good barometer as far as to where the Kansas City defense stands and where the Bengals complete unit stands, both defensively and offensively. Because I think we really kind of know what we're going to get from the Chiefs offense, whether they're on or they're off. But with all that being said, there's, as I said, there's an important game. The Chiefs can still clinch home field advantage throughout the playoffs. If I believe they have to win this game, then they need the Dolphins to win their game against the Titans. If I'm not mistaken, that's the scenario for the Chiefs to clinch. And the Bengals, if they win, I believe they clinch their division and basically guarantee themselves a playoff spot as division winners. If I'm not
they
mistaken.
can also, I believe, knock Cleveland out if they win this game because they play Cleveland next week for a head-to-head matchup. So if Cleveland were to win today and Cincinnati were to win or lose, then the next week's game, that would theoretically give Cleveland a chance to win this division. As scary as that is from what we've seen, the last couple weeks. But I do think it's important for Cincinnati. But really what I'm looking at here is this 51 on the total. I'm curious your feel on it. I just think nobody's quite expecting the Chiefs' defense here. And the number's a little swollen, especially from what we got from the Bengals last week. But if you look at that game versus San Francisco, whose defense I think would be similar in comparison to Kansas City, solid pass rush, sort of weak secondary, but if the pass rush is flowing, the secondary looks much better. And the Bengals seem to struggle to score versus them. So I think this under here is in play at 51. I think that's a little bloated. Now, the only thing you could tell me is maybe you don't trust in the Bengals defense so much, and you think Kansas City might roll away with it. I know it's really scary, especially the last couple of weeks when Kansas City's gotten rolling. But I think this will be a little bit more low scoring, especially weather-wise here in this game. So I kind of like the under 51 in this one.
Yeah, listen, I could totally get with you with taking the under on this one. Just really quick, this is just what's going on in my head. The way I look at this playing out is if you take the over on that over under at 51, it's more than likely that the Chiefs are going to roll in this one. Then you'll probably get the Chiefs to cover that spread. If you're taking the under, you probably expect more of a defensive struggle. And if you do so, then I think the Bengals can cover that spread. So I do like the under in this one. I think the points are pretty high for the possibility of two good defenses going up against each other. So I'm with you on that one if you want to jump on that as our first one.
Yeah, I think we better jump on that one because we're about to enter a world of 2+ touchdown spreads here. I'm glad they added another week to the season so we can get more matchups somehow versus very good teams versus very bad teams. That's what we need in our late weekend football. But we'll move on past this game. We'll put the Kansas City Chiefs, Cincinnati Bengals over under 51 as our first mutual pick of the day. Another good game, I think. Probably not all that entertaining unless you like conservative quarterback play and mild to good defense. The Miami Dolphins go to the Tennessee Titans here. Tennessee Titans 3-point favorites after their comeback win versus San Francisco, where they sort of locked up a nice little division lead here. I don't think they fully clinched it, but I think they pretty much clinched it there. Dolphins continue their winning streak after the, I would say, uneventful, but win versus the New Orleans Saints here. So 3 points is that spread, 41 on the total, 2.5 on the over-under. I think earlier in the week, I was leaning Tennessee here just because I keep waiting for the Dolphins to sort of drop. But then the more I dived into it, I went back and watched sort of the Tennessee-San Francisco game. I didn't think Tennessee played really, really well in that one. I think that had more to do with San Francisco making some mistakes there. I don't think A.J. Brown will go off quite as much because I think the Dolphins will, one, they have a better secondary, and two, they will be smart enough, if they get up to at least double and triple cover A.J. Brown. And that's where I think the Titans probably won't be able to score as much. So I kind of like that +3 there. For the Dolphins, I switched on that, but you could probably pretty quickly get me off of it if you think the Tennessee Titans defense might finally be able to bug this Miami Dolphins offense, which has been okay, but it's certainly not a powerhouse that's going to score, more than 20 to 24 points a game. I think I pretty much had this. If a team gets to 24, that will probably be the winning team in this game. So I'm curious your thoughts on the Dolphins-Titans.
Well, to be completely honest with you, ever since the injury to Derrick Henry, and even prior to that, I think the most impressive unit for this Tennessee Titans team has been that defense. They've definitely stepped their game up compared to what they were playing like last season. And, not to say that they're great by any chance, but they've been playing good enough football on defense, which is leaps and bounds better than what they were last year. The offense has definitely taken a step back since Derrick Henry got hurt, and that's pretty obvious to anybody who watches football. The guy's, the heart and soul of that team. But they're doing enough to win games. This last week, as you mentioned, you thought it was more about San Francisco than it was Tennessee, and I kind of have to agree with you there. And I've talked about it, for a couple of weeks now, where San Francisco has a really tough time closing out games, and that's basically what happened in that particular matchup. They couldn't close it out, and Tennessee obviously took advantage of it. Now you got to give kudos where kudos are deserved. They took care of business, so they got the win, and that's what matters. In this particular matchup, going up against the Dolphins, I'm kind of been going back and forth also, but to be completely honest with you, as unimpressive as I've been with the Titans offense, I think I've been less impressed by this Dolphins offense. And don't get me wrong, I'm impressed with their record and what they've been doing, especially after they lost so many games in a row. To come back and put themselves back in contention is really important. But I can't tell you anything about this team other than the defense that really pops out to me. and that's a little concerning when you're talking about such a close spread here. So I don't know. I think you'd have to probably do a little bit of selling here to get me to pick either way. This is definitely one of the more mild lines of the week, but even so, I'm torn which way to actually lean.
Yeah, I think that might be why I lean toward it even more. Maybe not overall the game, because like I said, I was leaning Titans a little bit, and then I didn't like that -3. I think I just was, whoever was getting plus in this game, I was probably leaning, because really, if you look at it, these teams are pretty similar, both, offensive and defensively. So, I mean, it's basically a toss-up game. It's probably which quarterback commits the least amount of turnovers. I know that's a cliche to say, but if either line can hold up, not get the quarterback pressured, and not commit turnovers, because I think a couple stupid mistakes on either side, both Dolphins or Titans side, will probably decide this game, because I just don't think either offense is really capable against these defenses of going out and winning it. And you saw that last week versus the Titans. When they played San Francisco, it took Jimmy Garoppolo to give them a couple interceptions, and that got the Titans back in the game and the win. And then I think you've basically seen it, this whole winning streak with the Dolphins. Honestly, I don't think they've scored more than, 17, 20 points in most of these games on the winning streak. Now, the defense has stepped up, and they've been efficient on offense. It's just it's a dink and dunk efficiency that is not going to lead to a lot of explosion. And you assume once they step up, versus a big-time defense, that will eventually come back and haunt them. You saw it last week versus Saints defense. Their offense was not good at all. Granted, the Saints gave them points. So that's basically how both these teams have lived, is both of them are given points. So if you don't like it, I understand, and we should probably, just pass on this game and, watch it and see if Miami can continue this run, because it makes for a very interesting game next week if Miami ends up winning this game. And, it's New England, Miami in a showdown basically for a playoff spot there head-to-head.
Yeah, one of the most surprising things this season to me has been the fact that it's taken so long for teams to actually clinch a playoff spot, even with another week in added onto the season. And I think it speaks highly as to the competitiveness and not just that, but the balance on the NFL throughout the entire league, as teams are just getting better. Yes, there's bad teams out there, but even those teams could give anybody a hard time.
Yeah, I think that's what makes this week difficult too, as we get, further down in some of these lines. They're really big spreads, but not every one of these teams is necessarily eliminated from the playoff picture just yet. So that makes it a little hard to sort of be like, oh, I'm going to take, this team because they aren't going to play hard. They're going to come in and play hard, and it just makes it hard. I mean, the next game we're going to do is a prime example of that, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders going to the Indianapolis Colts. Carson Wentz got the green light to go. But that being said, this is an 8.5-point spread for Indianapolis. 46 on the over-under, 4.5 on the first half line, and 23 on the first half over-under total. And I really, really want to take Indianapolis here. I think we're due for a stinker of a Las Vegas game. And when they throw out the stinkers, they tend to get beat really, really big. But it's really hard for me to take 8.5 when the Raiders are basically in pretty much the same position as the Colts. If they keep winning, they are going to get in the playoffs. And I think the Colts are a much better team, but it's really hard for me to be like, yeah, I want the Colts on 8.5 when the Raiders have just as much to play for in this game as the Colts do. And I think the Colts are the better team here. They should blow this game, but I can't quite pull the trigger on this one. I'm curious where your head at is in this game.
No, I'm in the exact same spot as you are. I think that it feels like a 6.5-point spread, which I thought it would be, considering the fact that we really don't know the details on Carson Wentz. It's very possible that he could have had symptoms along with that, positive COVID test that he had.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Carson got cleared, but we don't quite know how sick he was. So he might be a shell of himself as well. It's a great point to point that out as well.
Yeah, because listen, very easily, it could have been one of those situations where he had no symptoms. He just tested positive. Now, we had that rule change list last week in the NFL where they, shortened the amount of time that you had before you could return to either a game or practice after a positive COVID test, and then you had a negative one. He was actually cleared, so he's available to play. But like I said, we don't know if he had symptoms. If he had symptoms, it's very possible that his body hasn't completely recovered, and we're not going to see the same type of Wentz we've seen, over this big stretch where they've won a ton of games. All that, and I understand that this team revolves around the running game. I get that. But I still think that there's going to be situations where Carson Wentz is needed to make a play. And if he's not 100%, how confident are you in him, actually making these plays? I think that if it was 6.5, I'd feel a little more comfortable with taking the spread like that. But 8.5, the fact you have to win by 2 scores, it gives me a little bit of worry not knowing what the Carson Wentz situation was.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm curious if you could talk yourself in any way on going on the Raiders. I just can't do that, especially after last week. We took the Raiders in our mutual pick. We got the win on that one. But, I mean, basically Denver ran 40 offensive plays. I'm not sure if they got more than 4 yards on any of them. And that was a tooth and nail game of 17-12 where the Raiders basically looked like they were trying to give it away. So it's difficult for me to want to take the points here and the Raiders just because I think there's a higher chance for a blowout than there is for this to be a tight game here. So I can't really make myself take the Raiders, even though I think this line is about 2 points too high.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the Colts, and the Colts right now are America's sweetheart. Everybody's in love with the Colts. Hard Knocks, the in-season show is in love with them. Everybody's in love with them, and rightfully so. They've had a really good, second half to their season after starting off pretty cold. But 8.5, not knowing the situation with Carson Wentz, and this Raiders team just seems primed to, cost me money again. So I'm probably a stay away from this one.
All right, so let's have a fun fantasy one. If Wentz hadn't have gotten cleared, and apparently the Colts made a phone call to Phillip Rivers, and he had said yes, he was a go for this Sunday, would you be taking the Indianapolis Colts with a one-game contract with Phillip Rivers out there versus the Las Vegas Raiders?
If that were the situation, I would have popped the closet door open here in my prop room, and I would have found my bolo, and I would have been sitting here with my blue Mustang Colt horseshoe, ready to go, Colts, baby. But yeah, that's not what's going on.
I want one of these old guys to come out for the one game unretirement ceremony just to see what we can do.
How long do you have to be retired for you to qualify for the Hall of Fame?
I don't. I think it's 4 years. It might be 5.
Yeah, I don't think these guys are going to give up the possibility of getting enshrined for a one-game contract.
I want it to go back even further. I want somebody to make a phone call to like a Jeff George or a Randall Cunningham, maybe even a Brad Johnson, and just see if they can handle it for one game.
Yeah, I don't think they can. I listen, as impressive some of these guys were. I don't think they could handle it at this point.
I think if you pulled some of those 80 guys and they played in these today rules, they'd love it.
They'd love it. Are you kidding me? Some of those receivers from back in the 80s, look at the way these receivers play now. Oh, no, they would love it. The defensive guys would hate it.
Yeah, I know. All right. We'll move on past the Colts Raiders here and get in one where I understand it, mostly because the Jags have had a ton of COVID issues, and granted, they have been, I don't even know, terrible is a too kind of word for how they've played, but Jacksonville goes to New England. This spread is 17.5. total at 41.5. So somehow the spread is almost half the total. 9.5 on the first half, 21.5 on the total for the first half. I can't do anything with this game. I'm curious if you have a way to make a play here. The only thing I could say is I'd have to take the Jags because I don't even know if the Patriots are capable of scoring 17 points. So it would be Jags or nothing, and I'm not really in that kind of mood today. So I'm curious where you go in this one.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I'm not in that mood right now. Although I do think the Jaguars are probably the safer play here, believe it or not. As good as this New England Patriots team has been, obviously it revolves around that defense and Bill Belichick putting together the right game plan. The offense, even though it's done a pretty good job at pulling out some W's this year, probably a lot more wins than we thought they'd get. It seems like, the young quarterback is starting to hit a bit of a rookie wall. And a lot of people don't really believe in the rookie wall, but I remember back when Sam Bradford was first came out for the St. Louis Rams, and he was having a great season, and everybody kept talking about, is he going to hit the rookie wall? I'm like, what rookie wall are these guys talking about? And sure enough, he hit that rookie wall, and it was downhill from there. So I think that, he's had a pretty impressive year. I think in my opinion,
you could say it's been downhill ever since.
Well, for some people, but listen, I think the Patriots have been pretty impressive this year. I think they've done a lot better than we anticipated they would, and they definitely deserve some credit for that. But I think that we're starting to see a bit of a plateau here for them. They're a good team. They're a pretty good team, especially because of the coaching and the defense, but they're not quite at that level yet. And even though they're playing a really bad Jaguars team here, dealing with COVID issues and all that, I mean, this is the largest spread of the week. For me to put my money on a rookie quarterback, I don't think it's happening.
Yeah, I don't think I could really do the Jaguars here. The only thing I could say is I could use the same logic that I used last week versus the Texans when they had so many COVID out. I'm not sure really the talent discrepancy between the COVID outs and the replacement players coming in is all that much of a gap. So I'm not really sure how much of a drop-off from their actual team it is to their, COVID team that's out. So that's about all I can get. I'm not going to go 17.5 on this one, but I can't go with the Patriots in a spread versus a team who I think averages about, 20 points a game. So, I think this one's a pass. This next one, it's the only one I sort of stared at a little bit here of the big spreads on the day. Tampa Bay goes to the Jets. Tampa Bay is 14.5 point favorites here. 47.5 on the total, 7.5 on the first half, 23.5 on the first half total. I took the Jets last week. We took the Jets last week. We were successful. It was not a pretty game, however. The offense seems to be coming on along a little bit here, but they've also played a nice schedule of bad teams. But I didn't think they were a very good team last week versus Jacksonville, and if Jacksonville had any soul whatsoever, they probably would have won that game. But 14.5, it's a hard number to take, especially with that hook there. But if there was going to be a blowout one, I think it would be Tampa Bay over the Jets. I'm curious if you're in the same mindset, or you think that's just a tad too much here.
Listen, it's a pretty high spread, but I could see where you'd come up with that pick. I don't know exactly what the Bucs have to play for here. I don't think that they can catch Green Bay unless somehow Green Bay manages to lose the next two games.
It probably depends if you think Green Bay's going to lose today versus Minnesota.
Yeah, versus a Kirk Cousins-less Minnesota at that. I don't know. I don't know if the Buccaneers are going to come out and go full speed here. I think that they're, obviously a little bit older team. They've got experience going all the way here. And I think they're going to use that experience to probably take their foot off the gas a little bit, maybe conserve a little bit of health and a little wear and tear because they know that they're in the playoffs. And I don't think it really matters to them exactly where they seed. I think what's important to them is getting there healthy. And if they can get there healthy, they're probably going to be trouble. But with all that being said, I know it sounds weird, but I had the Jets on my personal picks as a maybe at plus 14.5.
Yeah, no, that would, you hit my number one concern there. With the Tampa Bay Bucks injuries, it's time for maintenance mode in that one. And 14.5, I think if they don't, get it early, they're going to win this game and then, close up shop. And, the Jets might be primed to, hit a couple backdoor points here. So, you definitely touched on my one fear here is that Tampa Bay, just sort of plays this out, gets the win, and goes home and doesn't think a thing about, winning by 10 in a, 24-14 type game.
Yeah, I could definitely see a scenario where that happens. And, not just that, I sometime during this last week, I watched a video on the young quarterback for the Jets where he went to a diner to have lunch and he talked to one of the waitresses who mentioned that her son was a big Jets fan. He had never been to a game and she didn't know who he was until someone mentioned it. But it was a really good feel good story that that kind of maybe is the reason why I'm leaning towards the Jets here. It's something, in the back of my head subconsciously. But listen, I'm not recommending anyone jump on this bet. I'm just saying that something inside me is kind of leaning a little towards the Jets.
Yeah, you've quickly talked me off the Bucks, which I was not out on a huge ledge. And I thought the story was going to go different when you say a football player walked into a diner and started talking to a waitress. So
that could have gone so many ways, I guess.
I did not see it going the way you went. But nonetheless, we'll move on to the next one. This one's an interesting one here because I want to get where your headspace is with this team here. Philadelphia Eagles go to the Washington football team. Philadelphia is a 6-point favorite here. 45 points on the total, 3 on the first half line, 22.5 on the first half total. The Eagles have blown out their last couple of opponents, but then you start looking at it, and they basically beat bad, decimated teams here. So I watched them, and I'm not overwhelmed by what I'm seeing on the field, even though they're winning in blowout fashion. If you think that's going to continue, which, one of the teams they blew out was the Washington football team, you probably, of the lines this week, you probably take that. But I don't know. I can't get there with the Eagles. I'm curious if you can get there with the Eagles. I just am not there. And this Washington football team seems to be a little bit healthier this week. Granted, Antonio Gibson is out this week, but he's been banged up for the last couple weeks, so I don't know how much of a factor that really will be. I just don't know with this Eagles team. It's hard for me to get a read on them, especially these last handful of weeks when they've been crushing teams, but basically they've been crushing very, very low-level opposition. So where's your head at in the Eagles-Washington space here?
Listen, I think that this Eagles team has actually transformed itself into a middle-of-the-pack type of team here. They're no longer what they were last season, which was pretty much one of the laughingstock teams. They play really good football, and I think it all starts with Hurts. His ability to get out and scramble and, kind of extend plays has really benefited this team, and Sanders has benefited from the attention that's gone elsewhere here. With all that being said, I've had a really hard time this season kind of predicting the way the Eagles are going to play. When I've picked them to, cover certain spreads, they haven't done so. And when I predicted them to get blown out or at least stay in close games, they've come out and lit teams up. So I've been kind of on and off with the Eagles here, but I think in this particular matchup, I'm going to jump on the Eagles. And I don't think it's, what was it, -6, right?
Yes, -6.
Yeah, I don't think that's such a horrible spread when you look at the way Washington has played over the last few weeks. Now, granted, I know some of those games that come to mind are obviously the Dallas games, which were a complete annihilations. But you mentioned the fact Gibson's not there, and I know he's been banged up, but not having him there takes away from your depth at wide receiver on offense. Heineke's definitely kind of fallen a little back down to earth. And that defense has seemed to really come to like a standstill. It's not as potent as it was even when they lost their best players. And I think we're starting to see the effect of not having those guys, not having that depth on that team. So for that reason, the reason that we also have some serious playoff implications here, I think the Eagles are going to come out really aggressive, and I think they're going to cover the spread. So I like the Eagles in this one.
Yeah, I was talking about the Eagles' last handful of games, and I'll give it a little bit of context. They've won, 6 of their last 7. They start out with a win versus Denver, 30-13. We both took the Eagles in that game. That was a nice little win there. Then they beat the Saints 40-29. And I think this is a kicker that probably sits in both of our heads because I believe we both took the Eagles in this game, and it was when they went to the New York Giants and lost 13-7. I think that's the last time the Giants were within 25 points of anybody on the season. And then their current 3-game winning streak, they beat the Jets 33-18. They beat the Washington team 27-17 on that Tuesday game. And then they last week beat the Giants 34-10. So it's not been like a murderer's row of who they've beaten. And you just look overall at their wins. Their other wins are Carolina and Detroit. Basically, they haven't beat a playoff team other than maybe if you want to think the Saints sneak in there. But Washington's not a playoff team.
Exactly.
So you assume that they might be able to get this one. I think the question is, can they cover that 6 on the road here?
Listen, I think they can cover it. I think and simply because of the way Washington has been playing lately. As you mentioned, their wins have been against, teams that are basically outside the bubble or on the outside looking in, as Washington is one of those teams. And I think that part of the reason why we're a little hesitant to take the Eagles here is I think we both have a little bit of residue left over from that Giant game where we thought they'd be heavy favorites and they'd come out and dominate that game, especially as poorly as Giants have played. But again, divisional rivals came back and bit us in the behind. And I think that's kind of what we've dealt with, when we're thinking about the Eagles over the last few weeks. But I think I'm starting to kind of get past that now. And I think that going up against a Washington team where both teams have playoff implications on the line, but one team's a little bit healthier than the other, I think I'm going to roll with the Eagles on this one.
Yeah, I think we should ride the Eagles on this one. So our second mutual is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles -6. All right. Next up, interesting here. Rams go to the Baltimore Ravens. I think when they made this game in the preseason, everyone was hyped up. It's turned into a bit of a dud here. Rams up to 7-point favorites with news that Lamar Jackson is inactive again. I think it makes me more nervous if he would have played, considering what I heard from his practice on Wednesday. So Tyler Huntley will be the quarterback. 7 for the Rams, 46.5 on the total, 3.5 on the first half line, 23 on the total here. I really want to take the Rams in this one. The only thing I think would make me pull off the Rams, one is the 7-point number on the road, West Coast going East Coast, and, unpleasant weather. But I think the Rams will be able to pass all over this Baltimore team. You watched it last week. The defense gets a little bit healthier this week, but Baltimore they don't have enough bodies on either side of the ball. And with the way the Rams have played defensively, I think this really is the play here. Take the Rams at -7, but it's just always scary going into Baltimore, no matter what sort of unit Baltimore is putting out there. I'm curious your feel on your boys here, the Rams.
Listen, everything you said completely makes sense, and I'm going to play Homer here right now, and I'm going to say that I wouldn't take that bet, and simply put, because the Rams this season have really been a team that plays to their opponent. We've seen them go up against teams that they should very easily beat, and yet it becomes a very tight matchup. The Titan game comes to mind. After Derrick Henry got hurt, a lot of people expected the Rams to really just kind of cruise past the Titan team, and the Titans came and smacked them in the face. Same thing happened with that Niner game. You looked at last week Minnesota Viking game. No Cook. Everybody just assumed the Rams are going to roll here, and it was a tie game. I know it didn't really feel like a tie game, but that was because Matthew Stafford kept it a tie game. He threw interceptions. Somehow the Rams still managed to win that game, but you can't throw 3 interceptions, have that many turnovers, have that many bad plays, and expect to win. And I know they're going up against a very decimated Baltimore Raven team here, but as I said, the Rams tend to play up to their opponent, or down to their opponent for that matter. So I think this has the potential of being a much closer game than people anticipate. I hope it's not, and if it is, at least I call it.
Yeah, I think that would be my only fear. We get another bad Matthew Stafford game, and this isn't the Minnesota Vikings. If you open the window for Baltimore, they'll walk in it and take the game here. You got to do essentially what Cincinnati did last week, which is basically just step on their throat and keep stepping, because you even saw it 2 weeks ago in that Cleveland game where Cleveland got up, but they couldn't put the Ravens away. And then, the Ravens are they're making plays here and there. And I think that's why the 7 number is just a little bit scary. But I do think overall, with what I've seen from the Lambs the last couple of weeks, defensively, they should be able to shut down the Baltimore Ravens here.
Listen, I in Baltimore's defense, even as a Ram fan here, this is me taking off my Ram hand, being kind of neutral here, trying to find something good for the opposition. I think that, everyone wanted to see Lamar Jackson going up against that Rams defense, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, but I don't think that their backup quarterback has played horribly in his absence. I think he's done a pretty good job at trying to at least, take advantage of every window, every opportunity that comes up for that team. Obviously they've lost a few games, but I felt like he's been at least dangerous, if you give him an opening. And that's something that the Rams want to avoid here. As you mentioned, if they want to win this game, they have to get ahead early and they have to stay ahead and keep their foot on the gas pedal here.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, we'll move to the next game. This was an interesting line here. Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers do get a couple of their offensive guys back, but somehow after losing to the Texans, they still get a 7.5 point spread here over the Broncos. Granted, it is Drew Lock there for Denver, 45 on the first half, 4.5 on the first half number, and 23.5 on the first half total. I think I'd lean Broncos plus the 7.5 here. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think the Broncos will be smart enough just to pound the ball with both Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon here. And I think the Broncos defense is at least solid enough to put up some resistance here. You can't talk me into taking the Chargers minus 7.5 after what I saw last week in a game where they just let the Texans light them up. So I'm curious your feel here on the Broncos Chargers.
Let's see. They say there's a rookie wall, right? When the rookie gets a certain point, that's about as good as he's going to perform for that season. Then he's going to start to fall off a little bit. And then there's a sophomore slump. Do you think that that's where we're at now?
I don't know. Herbert looked probably as poor as I'd seen him last week versus the Texans. But honestly, I think that's just more a stressor because you just watch this defense and they can't get off the field. So I think the offense gets on there and thinks they have to, make huge play after huge play after huge play. And I just think it leads to mistakes on the offensive side of the ball, pressing on the offensive side of the ball, and then the second you hand that ball back over to the other team, they just, run 10 yards, run 10 yards. And I think it's a bad mix right there. But, we've seen it where the Chargers, if they click, they're going to light you up. But I can't see it here versus the Broncos. Granted, they were just dreadful last week versus the Raiders, but it just seems like what the Broncos can do well plays right into what the Chargers defense does badly here.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, so do we want to make the Denver Broncos plus 7.5 our third pick here in our mutuals?
Although I have a little bit of reservations, I'm going to roll with you on this one. I have to side with the big CEO here.
Yeah. I will say, no matter how this goes, we probably will not have to bet on Drew Lock ever again after this season.
I hope so.
All right, we'll move on to the Houston Texans at the San Francisco 49ers. Fun with the Texans last week. The spread since the same at 13.5, which, I was a little dubious of with the Chargers last week, and I ended up making the, last minute bet there with the Houston Texans. I'm a little dubious on this line as well, but I'm not quite as aggressive on it. I'm just curious your thoughts on this game. But I just find it ridiculous that the San Francisco 49ers would be favored by 13.5 points, even if, it is the Houston Texans. Of the terrible teams, they've at least been the one team that shows they have a little life in them, at least offensively.
Yeah, even with all the injuries and all the other stuff they've had going on, they've at least shown up to fight. They remind me a little bit of the Jacksonville Jaguars of last season. A bad team that would still give you a fight. And, you had to come ready and not overlook this team. Otherwise, they were going to punch you in the mouth. But going up against the San Francisco 49ers team, who has, obviously these next two games are really important for this team. If they want any chance at sneaking in, I'm not exactly sure what their playoff chances are, but
they have to win for sure.
They have to win out.
Yes. And even then, if they win out and say like the Saints or a couple other teams win out, they lose the tiebreakers on it. So the first thing they have to do is just win. That Titans loss was just really, really bad in hindsight. Yeah,
because they could have pretty much almost guaranteed themselves a playoff spot had they won that game. And they had that game won. As we mentioned, they couldn't close that game out. So now they're in a situation where not only is their fate on their hands, but it's also in the hands of other teams. So all you can do is what you can control, which is you winning games. And I think they win in this one. But, even if it's some sort of like huge blowout, I have a feeling that somehow Houston's going to find a way to close the gap and cover that spread. I don't know if I like the Niners to cover this wide of a spread for a team that so far the season hasn't shown the ability to be able to close out teams, even in important games like last week. So I'm a little hesitant to take the Niners here. I think that, as I mentioned, I think Houston can cover the spread, but I'm also very hesitant to take this Houston team versus a pretty good 49er team.
Yeah, I think that's where I probably pull back here. I was a little more bullish last week, but at some point the Texans do have to start thinking about draft position here, and the Niners have to win this one. So I don't think I'm as bullish on the 13.5 in this one, though I do just find it ridiculous that the Niners would be favored by 13.5. I get that it's a home game, but there probably be 4,000 people at that game at that stadium. So it seemed too much. So that it's probably a pass. If we need to go back to it, I think we might go back and grab the Texans, but it's not something I'm really bullish on right this second.
Yeah, we still need two more games, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games left.
Yeah.
With what time do games kick off? 21 minutes.
Yep.
So we got 5 teams, 21 minutes, 2 more picks needed. I think we can do it.
Yeah, I think we can do it. All right, let's go to the next one. Arizona Cardinals go to the Dallas Cowboys. 6.5 for the Dallas Cowboys here. 51.5 is a total. 3.5 on the first half line. 24.5 on the total here. The Cowboys were everybody's disappointment, and then they scored 54 points on a decimated Washington team, and now everybody's thinking they're winning the Super Bowl. I don't quite know what the happy medium is there, but 6.5, I really must say I've been very bullish in taking against Arizona these last couple months. But with Arizona clinching the playoff spot, I think a little pressure gets relieved and they can play a little looser in this one. But I don't think I can take Arizona here. So my question is, can you take the Cowboys at 6.5 here? I'm probably a no, but I'm willing to listen if you can give me something.
If you're going to sit here and listen to me, you might actually end up going the other way here. And listen, as much as I want the Cardinals to lose this game, because if the Cardinals manage to lose this game and the Rams manage to pull off a win, it puts the Rams in a much better position to win that division and not just get a home playoff game.
That will also help my wallet if Rams win division.
Yeah, so it's something that we kind of both have a little bit vested interest in. But with all that being said, I know the Cowboys have played well over those last couple of weeks, especially when you count those Washington games. But they haven't been as impressive other than the Washington game to me. I feel like they've taken a step back. And this Cardinal team, I know that they haven't played well. They've lost a couple of games in a row now, and everybody's off the bandwagon. Everybody forgot how, 5 weeks ago we were talking about the Cardinals as probably the favorite to win the whole thing, even above the Packers, even above the Patriots and the Bills and all those other teams. Everyone was on the Cardinals bandwagon, and that was because Kyler Murray had a healthy staff and they were playing really good football. Even when he wasn't there, they were winning games, and it was all predicated on good defense and a good, solid, balanced offense. And now that Murray's back and they've lost a few games, everyone's off the bandwagon. I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. I think the Cardinals are still a dangerous team, especially as you mentioned. Now the pressure's off of them a little bit. Now the fact that they've clinched a playoff spot, and I think they play a little bit looser. And as much as I want them to lose, I feel like the Cardinals are going to cover this one.
Yeah, I'm leaning a little bit Cardinals as well at the plus 6.5. I can't.
Let me just tell you this. Before you give me your point. If I were to tell you that the team that 5 weeks ago everybody was basically crowning the NFL Super Bowl champ, if I told you that team is getting 6.5 points, would you take it?
I would, and I think that's why I automatically leaned, right out the bat on the Arizona Cardinals here. I think it's just they have been so awful. And I mean, that game last week where basically they were playing backup offensive linemen for the Indianapolis Colts, and they still got bullied and pushed around. I'm just like, what sort of heart does this team have?
I get it. They seem to be a very young team that tends to fold under pressure, and that's kind of what we expected pretty much all season long. It took a little bit longer than we anticipated it would have, but I think both you and I were on that boat that as good as this Cardinal team is playing, they're going to plateau. They're going to take a dive at some point and not play as good. And, it took a little bit longer, but this is what we anticipated to happen. All that being said, this is a new month. We're out of December now, and maybe that was just, December blues for them. And maybe they pick up the pace here. But again, I don't know which way it's going to lean. I like both teams here. Both teams are very dangerous. But to me, the Cowboys aren't the type of offense that's going to pound the Arizona defense into submission. They don't run that way. They used to at some point with Ezekiel. They don't do it anymore. So I'm not too scared of that. But I could see why you'd lean either way here. Both teams are good. Both teams are dangerous. And both teams seem to have gotten hot at different points in the season. So I could understand people taking the Cowboys here. But me personally, I'm gonna jump on the Cardinals here. Not only are they getting points, but I feel like they've shown the ability to win games when they're dealing with injuries. And I think that we got to give them some credit for that.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is it is a modern miracle that they won those games with Colt McCoy and no DeAndre Hopkins, because they really would be out of the playoff picture. You probably could replay those like 100 times and they wouldn't find a way to win those games. So they're in, but I'm not quite sold. They're going to find their mojo. But yeah, I lean a little 6.5 Cardinals here. So I will tell you these last couple games I'm not in love with, but one of them. But we probably should put the Cardinals down since we're both sitting on the same wavelength here as our fourth one. And if we need to bump one of these, then we probably bump one of them.
Okay.
All right, let's go Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints. I will tell you, I was really hyped for this, thinking I was going to get like a 3.5 or 4. But little did I know it's 6.5 here. We are just going to get full-time Sam Darnold. Thankfully, the 2-quarterback experiment is no longer working, though. Now reports are David Tepper feels like an idiot for paying Matt Rule that much money. Granted, I can't totally disagree, but anyway, Carolina Saints, 6.5. I really want the Saints here, but they just can't score enough points for me to take a 6.5. I don't care how bad the Panthers are here. I mean, the over-under total sits at 37, and the Saints barely. I mean, we talked about Miami barely being able to score. We're lucky to get 13 points out of the Saints, so scoring 6.5, just a no-go for me, and I will not be touching the Carolina Panthers the rest of the season as well.
I agree with you. Carolina's cost us a little too much money this season, and New Orleans, unfortunately, don't have much of an offense to speak of, which is very unfortunate when you look at the way that defense has played all season long.
Yeah, I'm not even saying New Orleans is going to lose this game, but I'm looking more like it might be 9-6 type game. So I just can't get to the 6.5 unless you have a play somewhere in there.
That's a big negative.
All right, we'll move on to the next one. This one made it into my maybes, but I probably can't pull the trigger on it. Detroit goes to Seattle. Seattle is an 8.5 point favorite here. Total sits at 41. First half is 4. That first half total is 21.5. I can't believe Seattle is an 8.5 point favorite over anybody.
I know.
Basically, I don't even really know the difference between these two teams, other than it seems like Detroit still seems to try occasionally in football games. So, I mean, that 8.5 is staring me hard in the face. But
let me ask you a quick question: who's quarterbacking for the Lions?
Jared Goff was the last I saw was a go, but I can make sure he didn't get pulled as an inactive this week.
Why don't you go ahead and look that up really quick, and I'll kind of give you my play on here. When I'm looking at both these teams, as you mentioned, I think that they're both, a pretty similar team. I think that they both have pretty strong running games with Penny on Seattle's side and, Swift when he's healthy on the Lions side. And even their backup running back did a pretty good job coming in, for the injured Swift. We saw this Lions team at least put up somewhat of a fight without Jared Goff last week. And I think that had they had him in the game, they probably would have won that game. And listen, Seattle, it's hard for me to really go against Russell Wilson, but the way they've played this season, it tells me that he's not 100% healthy. He's still not quite there yet. And I think it's going to take the offseason for him to get back to 100%. With all that being said, I think that if Jared Goff is playing here, 8.5 points, that might be, the play here. But I wouldn't be surprised if somehow Seattle comes out and blows Detroit out of the water here.
Yeah, definitely so. It's really hard to say. Swift definitely will be back and playing for this game. So that's, at least somewhat of positive on that. Goff doubtful right now. So I guess no Goff. So maybe it's a bad play, though, honestly. I mean, as bad as Seattle's been, I'm not sure how bad a play it really, really is. But, yeah, I guess no Goff. Probably pull off that 8.5. But nonetheless, I just want to half punish this for them making Seattle an 8.5-point favorite. I don't even think they've won more than one game at home, so you don't even get the fake 12th man nonsense. And the fact that the Lions are 3-1 underdogs in this game, it's very, very difficult for me to pass this up, though I do think the Seahawks probably pull this out, but I'd be stunned if they cover an 8.5.
Well, listen, I know we're running really low on time here, but we do have one more game we have to pick, and we have 2 games left.
Well, I got one I'm going to sell you on, and it's a thank you for the memories game. This next one is not a thank you for the memories game. It's a thank God we don't have to watch Kirk Cousins play quarterback for a week. And my boy Sean Mannion, Oregon State pride. Go Beavers, baby. Minnesota Vikings. Green Bay Packers. Packers 13.5-point favorites. I can make this one pretty quick. Too big a spread for me, even without Kirk Cousins. Green Bay's defense just has not looked good enough. They haven't even looked interested in covering these big spreads, especially after a hot start against the spread. They've lost like 2 or 3 in a row. So I'm a no-go on Green Bay, though.
Same here.
They probably
really
win
good.
the game easy.
Yes, I agree with you. They're a good team. They definitely have the ability to cover the spread, but it's far too large for me to put any money on it.
All right, so we're a no-go on the Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay Packers. All right, we're going with the sentiment and the sentimentality here. Cleveland Browns visit the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. And it's Ben Roethlisberger's last game.
Hoorah.
Probably at home, unless a minor miracle happens and they, 1, get into the playoffs, and then 2, somehow finagle a home game out of that, which I find highly, highly undoubtful. So I want to take Ben in the big send-off at home. Last game, Monday night, getting 3.5 points here. He's owned Cleveland for the majority of his career. Now, granted, for the majority of his career, he could throw forward passes. I don't know if that's still a capability, but I'm not sure Baker Mayfield can throw forward passes. Now, the real question here is TJ Watt. How healthy is he? He did not look all that healthy last week. Hopefully he can come out and put one big thing here, but I like Pittsburgh getting 3.5 points in this one.
Yeah, I think the biggest shock of the week was when Ben Roethlisberger came out and publicly announced that this was probably his last game at Heinz Field. And I think it pretty much signifies to everybody that he's going to be done after the season. And I think it's only right, being the last game of this slate of games here, that we go ahead and we jump on this. I think this is going to be a good one to kind of finish the week off on, Big Ben, his last game, possibly in Heinz Field. And, like you said, it's very unlikely he's going to get another home game. But if this is his last home game, I think it's only right that, after all the memories of Big Ben, good and bad, this is going to be our last pick here. I already wrote it down, so there's no need to finagle here. Pittsburgh plus 3.5.
All right, Pittsburgh plus 3.5. We're going with sentiment, and when Pittsburgh scores 2 points off probably a safety, and we have to watch Big Ben throw worm burners for 4 quarters, and to watch Najee Harris get drilled by the defensive line in the backfield as soon as he gets the handoff. We'll have known better to live with sentimentality in football, but for now we're going to hit it. So our mutual 5 picks start out on the side of the what did we do?
I got them written down. If you want me to go.
You give us a recap.
Okay, so our mutual picks here, our pick 5, are the under 51 total in the Chiefs-Bengals game. We have the Eagles minus 6 points. We have Denver plus 7.5. We have Arizona plus 6.5. And the farewell game, Pittsburgh plus 3.5.
All right, so those are our 5 mutuals. Let's get to our best bets before the games kick off. I got 3. I don't know where you land. I land on 3.
I ended up with 5.
Oh my. I told you.
I don't know how.
It was a big Achilles rain week. Large spreads all over the place.
Yeah, definitely the more conservative of the two.
All right. I'll start out Miami Dolphins plus the 3 for me.
Okay, well, for my first pick, I'm going with the Bengals at plus 3.5.
Oh, Bengals plus 3.5, riding against those Chiefs there. My next one, we already talked about it. Sentimentality, Pittsburgh Steelers plus 3.5.
For my second one, I am going with a JETS plus 14.5.
All right, and my last one, Denver Broncos plus the 7.5. What are your last 2, Achilles?
My last 3, I've actually got the Eagles.
3. You got 5. I forgot. You're loaded up on the big spread day.
It's a new year, baby. I've got the Eagles -6. I've got the Rams -7, and I've got Arizona plus 6.5.
All right, big day. All right, that's our show. Where can we find you, Achilles?
As always, you could find me on Twitter at TDAchilles.
Be sure to like and subscribe. Don't miss out on our recap and review show. We got one more week left in the season before we get into our big playoff shows. We'll try to get some college basketball shows out eventually, but every game seems to be postponed or canceled right now, so it makes it a little bit hard to bring the Dynamite in to do a college basketball show. We will have him on next week to preview the college football final and talk about our bowl pick'ems that basically went down the tubes with cancellations. But nonetheless, like, subscribe, don't miss any of our shows. That's our show, and we're out.